was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, better known as the Trump tax cuts. The rich benefited. A slashed corporate tax rate boosted executive salaries, but it failed to trickle down to workers. And the personal income tax cuts were skewed several orders of magnitude toward the top 1% of earners. Many of the Trump tax cut provisions are going to expire in 2025, which is where Project 2025 steps in. This 922-page handbook for the next conservative presidency takes a big swing at tax policy, and the changes suggested would mean higher taxes for the average American family, widening America's already massive income gap. And here's how. This year, the United States has 7 tax brackets. Your taxable income and filing status determine which bracket you fall under, and your bracket determines your tax rate, which outlines the percentage that you'll owe on different portions of your income. The top tax bracket has a federal income tax rate of 37%. The lowest bracket has a 10% income tax. Millions of Americans, by the way, don't make enough money to fall into any of the 7 brackets, which means they do not pay federal income tax, though virtually all Americans pay some form of tax, whether it's sales tax or state tax or property tax. But about 40% of American households end up not owing any federal income tax when they apply for government tax credits and deductions. Not so under Project 2025. In fact, on page 696 of Project 2025, it calls for, quote, simplifying the tax structure by enacting a simple 2-rate individual tax system of 15% and 30% that eliminates most deductions, credits, and exclusions. So, depending on your current income, you could be taxed more or less under this plan, but for millions of working-class Americans, taxes would shoot up. By raising the floor of our tax brackets, but lowering the ceiling, Project 2025 would shift the country's tax burden from the rich to middle and lower class Americans. It's a tax hike for working class Americans. According to analysis from the Center for American Progress, a nonpartisan policy institute, under this new system, the average family of 4 would see a tax increase of $2,985. While households reporting over $10 million in income would see a tax cut of $1.5 million. And to address the second part of that section, eliminating, quote, most deductions, credits, and exclusions, the tax credits work like government incentives, allowing citizens to write off expenses that are generally in society's interest. Project 2025 just says eliminate most. So which ones? Eliminate the tax credit meant to give tax breaks to parents with children under 17? Sure. It was only used by 36 million households in 2022. Eliminate the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which allows people to write off tuition costs and school supplies? Why not? Eliminate climate credits, included in the President's Inflation Reduction Act? Those tax breaks are meant to encourage folks to live climate-conscious lives. They've been more popular than expected since they were introduced, including, according to new data released by the Treasury Department, Americans collectively claimed $8.4 billion by using one of Biden's green subsidies to build solar panels or otherwise make their homes more energy efficient. And everything we've gone over so far is jammed into just one single sentence on page 696 in this massive tome. So I want to look at some of the other suggestions in Project 2025. It suggests decreasing the corporate tax rate to 18%. It had already been cut to 21% by the Trump tax cuts. It was at 35% before that. It calls for a new consumption tax, which is charged to you when you spend money, and floats the idea of a national sales tax. Sales and consumption taxes are the most regressive form of taxes and represent a vastly disproportionate burden for poor and middle-class families. Project 2025 argues for the repeal of the excise tax on drug manufacturers, which would destroy the government's ability to control the price of prescription medication. It calls for a cap of $12,000 on untaxed employee benefits that companies can write off for deductions, which would disincentivize employers from offering more comprehensive health benefits. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the average family medical plan costs $17,000, $5,000 more than that write-off. So Project 2025 is interested in both making employer-provided health care more costly for companies and making private health care more costly for the patient. But wait, there's more. Project 2025 suggests the next conservative president lock the door and snap the key. So these policies cannot be undone. Quote, Treasury should support legislation instituting a 3/5 vote threshold in the U.S. House and the Senate to raise income or corporate tax rates to create a wall of protection for the new rate structure. That's on page 698. Former President Trump, for his part, has been touting another brilliant tax scheme. This was him on Thursday at a press conference at Mar-a-Lago.
We're not going to charge tax to Social Security, the seniors. We're not going to do it. We're not going to charge. And also tax. I say the two things. We're going to have no tax on seniors, Social Security, and we're going to have no tax on tips. Very simple.
Putting aside that he really does seem to have trouble stringing two sentences that make any sense together, that what he just said sounds like a sweet deal. Like how a kid running for class president promises pizza for lunch every day. But when you read between the lines, it doesn't actually add up. Removing a tax on tips, the Center for American Progress said, would do little for restaurant servers, but deliver big to, say, money managers who could, under this law, transform commissions that they earn into a tip-based model and pay no tax on their earnings. As far as taxes on Social Security, a majority of low and middle-income Americans on Social Security do not earn enough money to be taxed on their benefits, but rich folks do. Higher earners who still receive Social Security because it's a universal benefit would benefit the most. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, eliminating taxes on Social Security would accelerate Social Security's insolvency by a year to 2032, and it would bring Medicaid to insolvency in 2030, 6 years ahead of the current rate. It would increase the deficit by over $1 trillion, which will then lead to more cuts. Now, if these policies don't benefit you and they don't benefit the government programs, whom exactly do they benefit? I'll let you guess.